G'day gamers, today we're going to be doing a quick update on my full summoner necro build. We're going to be going into new gear pieces, a couple of gear rolls. We've also swapped out a skill and also one main aspect, so we'll be going into that and as to the reason why. Further in the video, we'll also be going into the slightly new playstyle as well, so we've swapped up a little bit from the last time you guys might have seen the videos. We're going to be going into my Paragon board where it's at right now, and also the future boards that I'm going to go into as to the reasons why. We're also going to be talking about me doing a full respec once 100. We'll make it a little bit more efficient. For now, it's just kind of a haphazard thing. Thankfully, I did a little bit of deep dive and I also found out how good Fortify actually is for the build. So we're going to go into that right now. As you can see here, I'm a full summoner necro. We have all minions equipped. We got Raise Skeleton, Army of the Dead. For those of you who have seen my videos before, we have Corpse Explosion instead of Blood Mist. We also still using Decrepify, Golem, and Bone Spear. Here are the pieces of gear. I'm just going to hover over them. You guys can, if you want, you can pause them and have a quick read on them. You guys know there. This is the new one that we have. We used to have damage and against barrier here, but now we have increased armor. At first, this wasn't too great, but because we swapped out Blood Mist for Corpse Explosion Miasma, as I'm sure everyone's heard, Miasma is great, although the visual bug is kind of annoying, but they actually did talk about that and they'll be fixing the visual bug soon. But the Miasma helps proc this armor, and the armor being increased makes you really, really tanky. Unfortunately, we're now susceptible to CC because of this, because we don't have Blood Mist to get out, so we have damage reduction while control impaired on all of our gear now. So if you do get frozen or stuck in a perma CC, hooray, I love perma CC. We have these to keep us alive. But if you're not a big fan of this aspect, and you're not a fan of Miasma, you can swap out Miasma for Blood Mist and just use damage to elites gain barrier aspect. That way you can use the Blood Mist to actually get out of the CC, because it just makes you unstoppable. So there's that. We got warriors here. Skeletons get increased damage. An additional mage. We have the Ring of Mendeln. You guys have probably seen this before, but if you haven't, pause that and have a look over that. I guarantee you this ring makes your summoner necro OP. Definitely do that. And then we've got the attack speed rings there. As far as the new playstyle is concerned, like I said, the major difference is, of course, we swapped Blood Mist out with Corpse Explosion Miasma. You can fast forward later in the video, you'll be seeing a bit of gameplay. But for now, let's get into the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead is, we're back down to upgrade 2 on Reaper, doing additional corpses. We're still Cold Mage Essence 2. Bone upgrade 1, also just for additional corpses. If some of you have seen my previous videos, I now understand how the Fortify works during when a corpse gets dropped. Fortify being super important. So as far as rolls are concerned, the major things we swapped out is we're trying to get total armor and maximum life. Things like damage reduction from close distance and things like that. Super, super important for the build. But because on 2 pieces of my gear, I have rolled damage reduction while fortified on both pants and chest piece, I want to utilize Fortify being a little bit more important in the build. So if you have this skill point, you should definitely look at doing this, is when a corpse is formed from your skills or minions, Fortify for 6% base life. For mine is 298. Not a great number of percentage, with Reaper dropping corpses and Golem dropping corpses, as well as our Army of the Dead dropping corpses, and the Army of the Dead drop corpses. Because of this, they have a 15% chance to also leave one. The only way to gain the Fortify from a corpse is when you get additional corpse summons from Golem, Reaper, and Army of the Dead. Unfortunately, when you kill a mob and it drops a corpse, that doesn't count towards your Fortify. I figured that out the other day. That's how it works. So if you have an additional corpse summon from one of those 3 sources, then you gain a Fortify, and it's pretty easy, especially if you just ult even at the start of the dungeon just to have corpses summon. Your Fortify goes up really nice, and it's really easy to get damage reduction from that. So that's how Fortify works, at least for my build. We're going to go into a little bit of the deep dive on the Paragon board. So at the moment, if you've seen my previous videos, not much has changed, but if you guys are new, I'm going to quickly hover over all of it. And just in case you don't want to see this part of the video and you just kind of want to look at my D4 build, down below you'll have a link in the description. You can go to d4build.gg and you can just quickly hover it over yourself. For those of you that just want to watch the video, first glyph socket we here has the mage glyph. I've got this upgraded really, really high, so 170% damage with mages. We went up into the cult leaderboard. We've got basically every node here and all the bonuses. The glyph in this socket is the Dead Razor glyph. Damage reduction and minion damage. It's kind of a no-brainer. We went over here into the bone board. The main reason we did that is for the essence on kill. Essence on kill for this build, super, super important. It helps you remain essence, and I'm sure if any of you who have played Necro before, keeping essence is kind of a pain in the butt. Going into this board purely for this, I definitely recommend that, because you get plenty of Paragon points. But we also went up this way and got the warrior glyph here into this node. Got as much dex as we can, and we almost have 150% warrior damage as well. This glyph is only level 15. It's not max yet, so there's still going to be a lot more percentage coming out of that. I'm going to talk about how I went into this board, but I'm going to be respecing it, removing it at some point. We went all the way up into the golem board, and we have the control glyph as well. We need this in our build for crowd control damage, as well as increased damage, chilled, slowed, stunned, and frozen. Those percentages are great. I recommend the control glyph. And then we went over into the Scent of Death board. Now, like I said, the Golem board we don't want in the future. When I'm level 100, I'm going to do a full respec, and the Golem board will most likely get removed because we're literally only here right now for the glyph slot. We went into the Scent of Death board for the glyph slot, but we also found some bonus armor, so that's super nice. So the Amplify glyph that we have here is actually max level. We just haven't got enough Paragon points. But as you can see here, so 150% bonus to all magic nodes within range, and then when I get the 40 intelligence, you get enemies affected by curse skills, take 10% multiplied increased damage by you and your minions. Now, once we get additional magic nodes, we'll have 50 armor here, 50 armor here, 50 armor here, as well as 100 there. Once I do a respec, we'll actually be able to get that bonus, but this number is way too unachievable, unfortunately. So once we get these extra magic nodes, if my math is correct, we'd be upwards of about 550 armor just from this section here, as well as this glyph being here. Some of you may know, some of you may not. Armor is super important for every single class because it gives you damage reduction as physical as well as elemental. So I recommend getting this node here purely for survivability, because Nightmare Dungeons will absolutely destroy you. Now, as far as the future is concerned, I'll just quickly open it up to show you guys what my plan is. We're going to eventually be going into the Flesh Eater board, and that's purely for the glyph socket as well. I've done the math, I've gone through some of them. The glyph we're going to be putting here is the Exploit glyph. You probably heard of it before, but if you haven't, I'll quickly hover over it and show you what that is. Exploit glyph here, every 5 dexterity purchase gives you increased damage to vulnerable targets. Now, you've seen it a million times, even in my videos and other videos. Vulnerable is super important. You need it in your build. I chose to do survivability before we went and got this, but once I'm Paragon 100, we'll be easily getting this point. I mean, this will give me just a little bit more damage in a later thing, so that way we're not quite falling off in the late game, because the scaling in this game is quite brutal. We'll eventually get this, and if I've done my math correctly, I should be getting about 30% from this glyph with the dex nodes. As anyone who plays a Necro will tell you, there's not a lot of dex nodes in the board. The best I can find is Flesh Eater. As far as a compromise is concerned, we get some things over there, and once we do the full respec board, we'll also be getting damage to elite bonus. If I've done my math correctly, with this bonus equipped, we should be getting 50% damage to elites, as well as the glyph slot being vulnerable here. So we get the vulnerable glyph, we get 50% damage to elites if you have the bonus, and then at some point, if I have spare points, I'm going to go up here just for some bonus armor. I recommend also the Flesh Eater. And that's it for the Paragon board. That's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. As far as the gameplay and rotation is concerned, quickly show you guys a video of me running some dungeons, and I'll go over very, very briefly how my new playstyle goes. That's a little bit different from before, but I'll quickly show you that. So here is some gameplay footage in the background. Unfortunately, we got Suppressor and Cold. Shout out to the devs for having Cold Enchanted being absolutely OP, and they obviously will nerf them at some point, but this guy's great. Suppressor and Cold is almost a direct counter to the build, so this gameplay is super fun. However, we're not going to complain too much. Kick W. So for those of you who haven't seen it before, most of the fights we start off, we use Decrepify and then throw a Bone Spear in there for slow and then vulnerable procs. We then throw the Golem in there. With this current build, the Golem is a taunt, so he goes in there, taunt, summon some additional corpses. The Reaper go in there, summon corpses that procs out Fortify that way as well. So usually the rotation so much is Decrepify, Bone Spear, Golem, and then if we get an extra corpse, we do Ray Skeleton just for the 20% damage buff, as well as the heal for the minions, and Corpse Explosion whenever there's additional corpses as well. Corpse Explosion does give us a little bit of essence generation because consuming corpse generate essence, which is one of our skill nodes in the passive. As far as Army of the Dead is concerned, if you lose too many minions and you don't have any corpses, you use Army of the Dead to resummon them. Otherwise, whenever you see an elite, you just pop Army of the Dead for the additional damage, and obviously the extra corpses being summoned is nice as well. So it's a lot of synergy going on in this build, so make sure you do Decrepify for slow, Bone Spear for vulnerable procs, as well as the Mendeln procs. If you haven't seen the Mendeln ring, my previous video actually goes into that a little bit more, so if you want to learn a bit more, go check that previous one out. And then of course we use the Bone Golem whenever that's up, which is the cooldown is pretty short, and as long as the Decrepify gets lucky hit and proccing cooldown reduction, the taunt is up pretty frequently, to the point if played properly, the taunt goes off so much that you almost never even get targeted by the elites except for their affixes, so that's super great. The only thing I can recommend is sometimes, as you can see in this one, these enemies are a level 105, which is a tier 51. Sometimes there's a bit of a struggle here and there. Even though my minions are super tanky, they still obviously can take affixes to the face, and they do get pretty close to dying. So make sure you use your Ray Skeleton as frequently as every 5 seconds. They get a massive boost in health, but they also get a little bit of damage, which helps proc their damage, as well as the Mendeln proc. And as far as the Army of the Dead concerned, if there's an elite, just keep procking it. It's pretty simple gameplay style. I'm going to leave this going on in the background, but if you have any more questions, feel free to comment down below. Also, come check out, I stream every single day on twitch.tv/EpicSapien. If you want to come check me out live, you can do that. We're progressing to level 100. We're going to be doing that purely as a Necro summon, as well as a solo self-found. So come check me out there. Now, I also wanted to quickly talk about what they call the campfire stream, which is basically a dev stream. For those of you who aren't super interested in all that stuff, thank you for watching anyway. I really appreciate it. At some point, I'll be doing a full deep dive into this build guide again. I just wanted to give a quick update for those of you who've been following before. But if you want to learn a full proper layout, feel free to ask questions. And at some point in the future, if there's enough interest, I'll upload a video on that again. Now, for those of you who are an absolute nerd like myself, this is pretty much some of the bullet points of the dev stream. For those of you who might just want to go check out the campfire stream, there's a link. I'll post it in the description down below, so you can just go watch their video on their official channel. However, this is the bullet points. The Nightmare Dungeons will eventually be changed, so whenever you pop a sigil, you'll get a waypoint and you can directly teleport to the Nightmare Dungeons. They also addressed Nightmare Dungeons, how they wanted to actually give them a decent amount of experience, so they're going to be buffing the XP in Nightmare Dungeons at some point. We also got some information on when the season 1 starts. Many of you, much like myself, have been wondering whether or not the renown's going to follow over and what we're going to get. There seems to be some confusion here because they even had to talk about the topic multiple times because there's not a lot of clarification. But from my understanding, when the season 1 starts, you keep your altars and your areas discovered. As long as you got this stuff in the Eternal Realm, which is the non-season realm, you'll be getting up to tier 2 in a renown level, which is these 2 spots. From my understanding, when we start the season, we'll have the skill point and the potion capacity, and then we'll have to do, you know, strongholds, waypoints, side quests, and get all this stuff. But areas discovered and altars of Lilith, from my understanding, are the things that we will keep at the beginning of seasons. They also went into, again, some of you may have asked, I myself, I don't really care much for them. They're pretty much a throwaway thing in the game anyway. At some point in the future, we will be seeing gems will be going into the material slots. So at some point, they'll be going into just here. They'll just have, like, you know, a gem tab and they'll all just go put into here. They'll no longer be in your inventory. That'll save us a little bit more stash space. Hooray, not a big deal, to be honest. They're already such a small thing in the game that you just collect, like, you know, 10, 15, 20. If you're doing like 5 builds and you're building new gear, you just go collect 5 more. Super easy, super throwaway. At some point, they'll be even more thrown away to the point that the gem slots will just go in this material bag. They also talked about material cap being increased. For some of you who don't know, the material is capped at 9999 in your material bags. Most of you will probably never get to this point, but for people like myself who play a lot, some point you're going to be reaching that cap. They are increasing that too. They said infinite, I'm pretty sure. If it's not infinite, it'll be a much larger number. But for most of you, that's irrelevant anyway. They talked about resistances being buffed. Big nerds like myself noticed that resistances in this game are basically useless. They obviously have their use, right? Especially for you hardcore players, you have to focus on them a little bit. But most of the time, as long as you just get a decent amount of armor and enough health, resistances is something you'd almost never have to focus on. There are instances like that. There are strength characters that should probably put a little bit more effort into it. But mostly the entire, as far as I can see, the resistance system needs to be completely reworked. And they talked about that by season 2, which is about, you know, 3-4 months from now. Resistances should be reworked or buffed or whatever word they use. They should be relevant. But for now, they're honestly kind of bad. This is for you hardcore players. For those of you who don't see it, Scroll of Escape on DC should also be by season 2. I don't know why that's already not a thing, but basically it's an extra layer of, if you DC and you have a scroll, it'll be used rather than losing a character. For the hardcore players, that's good news for you guys. Over-leveled caches will be fixed. So for world bosses, if you've ever gone to a new world tier and helped with the world boss and you got a cache from it and you notice you can't use it because for some reason it's like way higher level, that's a bug and they're going to be fixing that. And then we got to scaling. The question was asked about what their thoughts are, what they might be doing about scaling, because it's not a very good system, the scaling. It's kind of lame, to be honest. The further you get into the game and the higher level you go, the enemies get stronger. You don't get much stronger. It's kind of weird, a balancing system. Most of the time, it's just if you really get a god tier ancestral weapon, a lot of the content becomes super easy until at some point you just kind of hit a wall. Not ideal. It's not too bad, but it definitely needs some working on. But when asked this question, all they seemed to talk about was item power level, as if that was the problem, but it's not. I don't know what happened there. It was super weird. Anyway, guys, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as I said earlier in the video, if you made it this far and you want to see some more Necromancer content, I'm going to be doing this full Necro all the way to level 100, and that's going to be, you know, absolutely excited to see what this character can do at 100. And at some point, I'm even going to take on Uber Lilith, and we'll see how that goes. Thank you so much for watching. Now, I plan on making more and more videos. If there is enough people that were interested, I will do a full deep dive into this build at some point. I just wanted to make a quick short video on update, the campfire stream that we had, and some updates here and there. So if you wish to see a full build guide and as much in depth as I can, I will happily do that. Let me know down below, and I will absolutely upload that for you guys. Otherwise, come check me out on my live streams. Thank you so much for watching.